We've just ripped this plant to shreds, saving it from ugly pot syndrome. In the previous video, what we'd done is we'd carefully removed the roots from adhering to the outside of the pot, and we want to get this repotted now. We have all this amazing root volume that we've managed to save, and now we've just got to be able to get this back into its original pot that we have sanitized, cleaned, washed, etc., etc. So let's get to it. Welcome to the Nature Company. If this is the kind of information you're interested in, please hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell to be notified of all our upcoming content so you don't miss out on anything. So as I said, we've managed to save the majority of the working root system on this orchid, and now we just have to be able to get this back into the same pot that we had taken it from. This pot we sanitized, we used boiling water on it, and then we sprayed it with an alcohol disinfectant. So this is fine and ready to use. Also the media, we're reusing the stones that we've taken out, also been washed and cleaned and heat treated. So they're also okay and ready to be used again. This way we use very little waste. It's only that sad, sorry, styrofoam or polystyrene that we're using the leftovers that we've got from our garage door from one of the previous videos. Please don't go out and buy this. Rather, just use more rock or lava rock or something else to fill up the base. It's just if you've got this, instead of throwing in the trash, put it to some use. Okay. Now let's have a closer look at this and see what we need to do to be able to get it back into this pot. To start with, I'm going to be stripping off all of these old sheaths around the pseudobulbs. This is just to ensure that there's more light area for photosynthesis to take place and to make sure there's no insects or bugs or any unwanted ugly things that are going to cause disease and infection that might be hiding in between this. I've taken off all the dead roots, and the reason that we do this also is so that as the roots rot further, we don't want them to bring in any of those nasties, because root rot, even on the previously dead roots, can then spread up into your new fresh roots. And then looking at the shape of this plant, this isn't going to be particularly suited to fitting back into the pot as it is, because what had happened is it had started to grow out and along the side of the pot. So we have all these different angles of the rhizome to try and fit flat on the surface of the pot again. So we'll look at this carefully and examine where and why we must cut that specific point off. So here we can see we have a nice flat section of rhizome which then starts to curve at this point here. So what we want to do is really cut it off as this curve turns onto the horizontal. So we're going to be cutting off that section over there, and we'll have another horizontal section here with 3 back bulbs. These are going to help provide enough energy to hopefully allow one of the dormant lateral buds to then burst and produce a new full plant again. And then by cutting off these back bulbs, we're actually almost giving the plant a warning that something is happening, and the hormones take control again. The hormones are then pushed to those lateral buds in and around the rhizome and help force those to start producing those lateral growths that we want, producing a bushier plant. So invariably we'll land up with more than just the one single lead. So let's get straight to that. Nice sanitized secateurs. Taking a careful look at our plant, we'll just go straight in as close to that final pseudobulb as possible, and we'll trim right in at the base, cutting through that rhizome. So that gives us one very small sad piece, but these can still surprise you. There we have our plant. It looks like it's going to fit into the pot much more easily. And then let's just get to cleaning off all this old debris from in and around the pseudobulbs. This doesn't necessarily have to be done. It's just that some cases I do like to just do it to give that plant that little boost. Also, at points where you're wanting those pseudobulbs to really burst, sometimes it's preferable to do it so that you can allow light onto those lateral buds, and that again, that light and warmth will help force them to start producing new growth. But also remember, when doing it, don't just go ripping. Just be careful, because the little lateral buds are hidden in underneath. And it's pointless doing all this work to remove this if you then go and strip out the lateral buds too. Because there are only a limited number of the dormant buds available on each plant, and we want to keep as many of them as possible. Also, by removing all this debris, you can help allow for the moisture to dry up in and around the base of those rhizomes, because sometimes they do hold a little bit of extra moisture, and that sometimes can be troubling for your plant. And if we're looking in carefully here, I'm not sure how well the camera is going to pick it up, but there we have a little lateral bud there. We have one down there. We have another one over here. And there's one just under the surface over here too. And that's just on those two pseudocanes. If we look around, we'll probably find more. For instance, over there, over there, on this back one. So there's lots of potential growth that we can get out of this plant. And as you may have noticed, I'm using the identical media that this plant was originally planted into. One of the reasons that I'm doing that is because this has become acclimatized to the specific media and the way the water and air movement happens through it. And if I can keep the media the same, this plant has less to try and acclimatize itself to before it starts its new growth. So it should theoretically just keep growing like it hasn't ever been transplanted. Now all of these roots, we're just going to be carefully inserting into the pot. They're still nice and moist, so they have that flexibility. We're just carefully going in and wrapping the roots around to make sure that there's enough space. And I'm going to be setting the back of the rhizome up against the pot. We're just going to treat that little cut-off area there with a bit of cinnamon, and we'll be ready to go. Also, I forgot to show you, you always inspect this little cut-off section here to ensure that there's no problems, anything like fusarium or anything like that that may have infected the plant. So always check, inspect your cut-off area just before covering it up with the cinnamon, because then you won't be able to see. This is all healthy, so all is good in that perspective. There we go. So just setting the plant right back up against the edge of the pot, allowing for that forward growth. We're going to start off with just one heavy one at the bottom, and then we're going to go in with all of our polystyrene. The polystyrene is going to be all at the bottom of the pot. For one, I don't like the look of it. And for two, it just gives those big air spaces. It makes the pot a little bit lighter than what this complete set of stones would do. And this way, by getting it in, I'm not using that heavy weight straight onto the roots, which are going to possibly damage them. So just using that light polystyrene in and around the roots so it can set in nicely without putting too much weight directly onto each root or scratching them as we try and fit the stones in. And then just a mix of different size of stones and broken bricks. We'll just set that in. Because always remember, cattleyas like to get wet and then to almost straight away dry back off again. They don't like to sit in a wet media. So if you're going to be watering frequently, this is one of the best ways to do it so that we don't overwater our plants. And there's one of the amazing things about using these inorganic heavy materials is your plant is set already. It doesn't need any stakes to try and keep it upright or anything. It's basically ready to go. So there we go. Our rhizome horizontally across the top surface of the pot. Those roots covered up by this well-drained, well-aerated media. And he's ready to go. This, remember, because it's in such a well-drained media that you are going to have to water it more frequently than if you're adding extra bark or coir chunks or anything that's going to hold more moisture. So be aware of the environment you're in and its surroundings and treat your plant accordingly. So again, to lessen transplant shock with an orchid, what you need to do is ensure the roots are nice and supple. They've been allowed to soak for a while so that they're not as brittle. Try and repot into the same or a similar media as to what the orchid was originally, so the plant doesn't have to try and acclimatize to a new media, and try and repot it as quickly as possible from when it was removed from the original pot. It always helps because drying it out for that section a while afterwards, if it's a day or so, sometimes can be quite damaging, especially if those roots have been deep inside a pot all the time and not used to having light and that dry air around them. So there's just a couple of useful handy tips on repotting your orchids to try and get the best and give them the least stress. And Ed has produced a lot of content in that Buy Me a Coffee link down below, all there for your reference, so please go have a look. And thank you for watching. If you found any of this information helpful, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button down below, and that notification bell, bing bong, to be notified of all our upcoming content so you don't miss out on a thing.